Hello, my name is Dr. Aaron Rackham. I'm a chiropractor in Greenville, Michigan, and I've been asked to talk about a book that you all read recently and some of my own thoughts and views. I was looking forward to speaking to a group. Typically, I like to throw a couple jokes in there and I had some really high quality jokes. I mean, I had 4 or 5 really good zingers, but you're not going to hear them. I'll throw one in there just to show you the top quality of these jokes. How many chiropractors does it take to screw in a light bulb? Well, it only takes one. Well, it does take 22 visits, but it only takes one. Like I said, quality jokes. Chiropractic is often misunderstood. I think it's becoming more and more mainstream, so it's becoming less misunderstood. But I'm going to go over, I think, what I call it it's called the 4 Chiropractic Truths. And I think it gives insight to just what we do and why we do what we do. First truth, the body is a self-regulating, self-maintaining, and self-restoring organism. So often we think there's external things that we need to. The body's engineered to fix itself. Truth number 2, the brain and the spinal cord, the central nervous system, controls, communicates, and coordinates every organ, every cell of the body. Number 3, anything that interferes with that communication, such as this vertebral subluxation, causes dysfunction, leading to disease or any number of symptoms. 4, anything that removes the interference, such as a chiropractic adjustment, restores proper communication and allows the body to function efficiently and heal itself. We are meant to heal ourselves. That's what chiropractic's all about, letting the body heal itself. Now, let's talk a little bit about the book, The Body by Bill Bryson. It was a very good read, lots of information. I'm not going to give you a quiz or an extensive book report. That would be a heck of a quiz if it was a quiz, but there's a couple fun facts. This at least will let me know whether or not you read the book. 80% of the air we breathe is actually nitrogen, not oxygen. Now, one thing I like about this whole experience, since it's like a Zoom thing, I'm going to view this as an open book test. So if anywhere along the line I muff up, I might just say, remember, it's an open book test. Anyway, another fun fact. We shed about 1 pound of dead skin every year that ends up as dust. So when you look at that stream of light through a dark room and you see all that dust, realize that that's a bit of you, a bit of your closest friends, and a bit of your worst enemies. It's a little bit of all of us. We grow about 25 feet of hair in a lifetime. Some of us men, some of you guys grow a little less. I'm just saying. This, I think, is really fascinating, especially for all your computer geeks. A small piece of brain cortex, the size of a grain of sand, has about 2,000 terabytes of information in it. Truly astonishing. Here's a fun one. Thin people have more gut microbes than fat people. We have about 3 pounds of gut microbes. And all that little bacteria, all those little critters are a very important part of actually a healthy process of the body. Very important. Tongue receptors. The taste receptor and the pain receptor are right next to each other. So that's why sometimes if you eat hot food, the spice actually feels like heat. In fact, the receptor of pain will be very much like touching your tongue on a 335 degree Fahrenheit burner. It's that amount that can be stimulated. Heart beats about 100,000 beats a day. That's about 1,680 gallons of blood that gets circulated through the body. This is a little fun fact I've thrown in here just for my wife. My wife has, for whatever reason, an aversion to hiccups, If she sees you hiccuping, she might remind you to breathe right. But anyway, this is for her, this little tidbit. The longest sustained hiccups in recorded history was 68 years. A farmer in, I believe, Ohio. Anyway, she would have told him to breathe right. Let's talk. There's a couple timely book quotes. I'm not going to read a bunch of stuff out of the book, but a couple things. I think this one's pretty timely. About diseases. A successful virus is one that doesn't kill too well, but can circulate widely. I guess, and wildly. That's what makes the flu such a perennial threat. A typical flu renders its victims infectious for about a day before they get the symptoms. Unfortunately, with the COVID virus, it's as many as 3 days. And for about a week after they recover, which turns every victim into a vector. The great Spanish flu, and you've all heard a lot about it if you've been paying attention, and even if you haven't been paying attention, you've heard about it. The 1918 flu racked up a global death of tens of millions. Some estimates put it as high as 100 million, not by being especially lethal, but by being persistent and highly transmissible. It killed about 2.5% of the victims. And unfortunately, the jury's still out on the coronavirus, but it is a timely little input. Okay. Being a chiropractor, we have a tendency to promote a drug-free life. We're guilty of it. It's what we do. It's just maybe a part of our training, focusing on nutrition. But let's talk a little bit about what the book talks about, the drugs, how the drug companies kind of influence medical doctors. One of the quotes by this gal, Harvard study. Anyway, they figure that the estimate that the drug companies in America spend tens of billions of dollars in direct payments to doctors every year, either direct payments or influences in any number of ways. I found that to be interesting. I want to be clear, though, this is not an indictment on the medical profession. I think right now, especially, that we have seen the medical profession at its best. We've needed them to be at their best, and they've truly been amazing and inspiring in how they're approaching and dealing with the drug of this deadly virus that has hit and strapped our country. So not against them, but clearly against the drug companies. I think for the fact that they're trying to manipulate the medical doctors. They have to feel it. They know it. I'm sure they joke about it, but it's very visible. And here's something interesting. The drug companies have not always behaved the most ethical of ways. Surprising. Purdue Pharma paid $600 million in fines and penalties in 2007 alone for marketing the opioid OxyContin with fraudulent claims. Merck paid $950 million in fines for failing to disclose problems with its anti-inflammatory drug Vioxx, which was withdrawn from sale but not before it had caused perhaps as nearly as 140,000 avoidable heart attacks. GlaxoSmithKline currently owns the record for penalties, $3 billion for a raft of transgressions. But to quote this gal from that did a Harvard Medical School study, said these kinds of fines are just the cost of doing business. For the most part, they come nowhere near offsetting the huge profits made by the errant companies that they are hauled into court. So it doesn't really matter. Part of the way of doing business. That's why I'm kind of glad that my profession that I chose is really about focusing health and wellness without the aid of drugs. Though I want to be clear, I didn't put anybody on a medication. I will never tell anybody to go off a medication. But I will try to help anyone that I'm able to influence to live a healthier lifestyle. I think one last thing about the book, I think he wanted to make sure that we didn't question any of his information throughout the book, because over 10% of the book is sources. So that's pretty interesting. I know none of you read that, and I didn't read it either. So I don't think we can question a lot of the information. Let's talk about the human body and what I think affects the human body more today than any other time, and probably is the greatest challenge that we're facing today, and that is stress. The book talks a little bit about stress. I'm going to go into a little bit more details, and I think I'm going to try to give you some tools on how to deal with stress and to just live a little better and stress-free life. Stress is no stranger to us. Let's face it, any good movie that you've ever seen, I can sum up the movie in 3 words. Something goes wrong. Now, the advantage of the 2-hour movie is within those 2 hours, all the things that cause that initial stress somehow are fixed and resolved, and we're left feeling, yay, everything went well, everything worked out. The challenge is we're not in the middle of a 2-hour movie. And when something goes wrong, we feel that stress, and that stress can carry with us and can affect us both physically and mentally. Okay, a little bit more information. I'll try not to read too much, but every once in a while I'm going to make a few points, at least at the first part of this little lecture. Stress and the human body. Let's talk about the Mayo Clinic. I always try to find sources that were very reliable and familiar. Stress management. They talked about all kinds of information. You go on the website, any of the websites, but especially this one, and there's all kinds of information about stress. Let's just talk about a few that they point out that how it affects the human body. It can cause headaches, muscle tension or pain, chest pain, fatigue. I'll go through these quick. Change in sex drive, stomach upset, sleep problems, anxiety, restlessness, lack of motivation or focus, feeling overwhelmed, irritability and anger, sadness and depression, overeating, undereating, angry outbursts, drug or alcohol misuse, tobacco use, social withdrawal, exercising less often. According to that, we are completely, all of us, screwed, because I don't think there's anything in there that each and every one of us hasn't experienced at some point. Now, that same article does point out a few things on the Mayo Clinic tells us a couple things that we can do to help alleviate stress. I'll point those out. It says practicing relaxation techniques such as breathing, meditation, yoga, tai chi, and massage. I like this one. Keeping a sense of humor. Another one here they point out, spending time with family or friends. I would put a little quotation mark there, unless the family and friends are the ones causing stress, then that might be ill-advised. Setting aside time for hobbies such as reading or listening or reading a book. That's according to the Mayo Clinic. Okay. Now, one more thing in my research, to be clarified, I tried to find something that was very succinct about stress, how it affects the body. We all kind of know fight or flight. I think we've heard that enough times to know the familiar. Let's talk about what's actually physiologically going on in the body. Cortisol is the main stress hormone. It activates fight or flight response. It's made in the adrenal glands, and its main job is to help you handle stress. But when your life is full of stressful events all day long, you end up flooding your body with cortisol. Now, the opposite hormone in the body is called oxytocin. Lots of people like to call this the love hormone. It's the exact reason why you instantly fall in love with a newborn baby. Oxytocin is called the anti-stress hormone also. It encourages us to cuddle, to hug, to nurture. It is what makes life worth living. So I guess the moral of that story is less cortisol and more oxytocin. After listening to all those effects of the stress, and it's all around us, it's in every part of our world, stress. The question often comes, is there hope? Is there any hope of actually getting ahead of the stress and not having affect my body, your body, as much? And there most definitely are. There are more tools readily available now than there ever has been. Let me talk a little bit about a few of them. Oprah's been telling us for years that we need to meditate. I remember back in college, my first or second year of college, and I was influenced by someone I needed to meditate. It was probably a girl. So I thought, I'm going to meditate. So I got a blanket laid outside. I wanted to be with nature. I found a quiet place. I laid out on the grass, and I'm laying there, and I'm trying to quiet the mind. And if you're anything like me, quieting the mind is pretty challenging. But I spent 10 minutes or so just kind of squirreled off here and there and finally bringing it back. And I just felt like I was finally reaching that quiet place. And as I'm laying there with my eyes closed, all of a sudden I felt on my forehead. I thought someone threw a water something on me. I quickly realized that it was not water, that a bird had left me a beautiful surprise right in the middle of my forehead. At least to say, my experience with meditation was quickly interrupted, and I didn't meditate for a while after that particular experience. I would hope that if you haven't meditated, your first experience will be better than mine. I think prayer is the ultimate form of meditation. I think with prayer we have to make sure that we take time to listen. And I think when we're in the middle of a prayerful state in our heart, form of meditation, reaching out, searching, that I think getting out into nature, at least for me personally and for many others, is a way that we can listen to God's voice. Just my advice, I think that getting into nature periodically, taking that time, helps us. And now there's more guided meditation apps than there ever has been. If you Google meditation apps, not tens, not dozens, thousands of them. And now there are some that mainstream we'll see on our TV commercials for them. Astonishing. If you go on YouTube, you can Google positive affirmations on YouTube and you'll be astonished. There's just video after video. There's nighttime videos you can listen to that will help you de-stress at night. It's truly a better time to seek that particular type of energy than there ever has been. The tools are there. Now, if you're stressed as a person, I'm going to give you a little tool that I learned while I was getting my education, my additional education at the Infinity Institute in Dearborn, getting my hypnotherapy certificate. Anyway, it's a way to deal with person stress. What I mean by person stress, I mean that person is giving you stress. Typically, when we're dealing with person stress, we have the tendency to, if they're dishing out garbage, we have a tendency to, okay, I'll take that, and we kind of eat whatever garbage they're sending our way. We absorb the stress. Even if it's completely wrong, we will still absorb that stress. So I'm going to give you a little mental, exercise that you can do that will absolutely, surprisingly help you deal with people stress. This is not my idea. This technique's been around for centuries, and I promise you it absolutely works, even though it sounds a bit ridiculous. So, this is it in a word, a little sentence. When someone's coming stressful at you, blah, 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 you in your core become a tree. You heard me right. I said, become a tree. Now, why a tree? What I mean by becoming a tree, visualize yourself in your mind. Just imagine yourself becoming a tree. A tree is connected to the earth. A tree is strong. A tree can withstand high winds. That's why you become a tree. So if you can mentally become a tree, and at the same time, that person that's dishing out the stress, if you visualize them as a billowing cloud of hot air, and then you feel and see that hot air just going by you, just like a tree in the wind, the key is you're not absorbing that stress. It's passing by you. And what happens in that scenario is that it removes you temporarily from that environment, and you will find it surprisingly easy to almost be amused. In fact, it'll be a challenge sometimes if you can really, in your mind, picture them to become this ridiculous cloud, billowing air. You'll have to try not to snicker at them. I do advise you that if you start snickering at somebody that's trying to spread stress your way, that you might trigger them to try to give you a little more stress. Just keep it all in your head, your imagination. But it absolutely works. The first time you do it, you'll go, wow, that really does work. It's surprising. Now that's a little thing that was taught centuries ago. I think that throughout the ages, there have been those people that have been insightful. And I think now is probably a better time than any time in the past to reach out and search and try to learn from the great philosophers and the philosophies throughout the ages. I got through my first page. Okay. I think simply being open to a new way of thinking. We don't want to be closed-minded. When you're closed-minded, then it's kind of like they say the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Simply being open to something new will give you the opportunity to learn something new and to hopefully grow in that process. So my interest, being open to history and the great philosophers, for whatever reason, somewhere in the back of my mind, even as a young child, I was always intrigued by ancient history, ancient wisdom. And for whatever reason, my interest was in ancient America, the Aztecs and the Mayans. That history always was very intriguing. It was on my bucket list to go to Central America, the Yucatan Peninsula, go to Tulum, Chichen Itza, went to Peru, went to Cusco, Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu. Yes, I did say Sacsayhuaman. It is spelled with an A, S-A-X. I don't know, anytime the locals talk, it sounds like sexy woman, and who doesn't want to know more about that? Anyway, at this place, Cliff and Sacsayhuaman, there is above Cusco, Peru, they have these huge boulders that are placed intricately intertwined like jigsaw puzzles. How they did that and with no mortar, it is truly astonishing. It's something to see. The whole country of Peru is more like an outdoor museum than any place I've ever experienced. Truly fascinating. So having this interest and kind of intrigue with ancient America, when I came across information about the Toltecs, I found that intriguing also. The Toltecs were a people that were prior to the Aztec, prior to the Mayan. They were between the 8th and 12th century. And yet the Mayans and the Aztecs were influenced by the Toltecs. They referred to them as the ancient ones or the wise ones. And many of the Mayan and Aztec leaders claimed heritage to the Toltecs because it was a way of claiming intelligence and superiority, whether they were actually descendants, who knows, but they claimed it because it had value. So when I came across this book called The Four Agreements, a Toltec Wisdom book by Miguel Ruiz, I was first intrigued. I saw the word Toltec. I was familiar with the people, and so I'll read it. And when I say be open to information, at the time I was open to information. So I found it not only fascinating, but it truly revolutionized my life, at least. It's called The Four Agreements. Let me give you a little bit of information on why I think it's important, and really why I think the Four Agreements is, even though it's ancient philosophy, I think it applies today more than ever, and it applies in the way of trying to rid yourself of stress. Once again, back to stress. I believe that living the Four Agreements will help you alleviate stress in your relationships, in your world, in your work environment. By simply trying to live these four agreements, it can help you through that whole process. So what are the agreements? I'll go through them and I'll try to be brief as possible and just give you a couple of insights on how they apply to information that I've learned throughout the years. The first agreement: be impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your word. At first I was like, what is that talking about? Yet the power of the word is huge. You know, the Gospel of John says in the beginning there was the Word. You know, we differ from animals primarily because of the spoken word. The spoken word is the most powerful tool that we have, though it unfortunately is a two-edged sword. The Toltecs thought of it in two forms: white magic or black magic. But all were in the form of the spoken word. Black magic, you know, how can somebody through simply speech rise to power and then lead a nation into what happened with Hitler's regime? You know, and unfortunately we think that we're done with that, but the spoken word is being spoken today to influence people and to take them into dark places all over the world. I want to believe that we learned from Hitler and that won't happen again, but there's been a genocide since. There's human trafficking. There's stuff going on right now that leads me to believe that we still need to learn. We still need to grow as a society, as a people. But the nice thing, even though there's black magic in the world and the words that are influencing people negatively, there's also white magic. White magic, kind words, can magically influence someone for a lifetime. Now here's a tricky one, and the hardest one. The most important person that you can speak kind words to is yourself. And sometimes the most difficult person to speak kind words to is yourself. My lovely wife is a level 2 Reiki healer, and often one of the assignments that she gives one of her clients is a mirror technique where she asks them to stand in front of the mirror and speak little sentences, but the sentences are basically positive affirmations about themselves. And it's often astonishing how difficult it is for us to speak kindly to ourselves in the mirror. Let's try to be kind to others. Let's try to be kind to ourselves. Being impeccable with our words is like if our tongues were the rudders of a ship. It can guide us to either misery or to happiness? Let's try to lead our ship to happiness. The second agreement. Don't take anything personally. Wow, this is a tough one. How did they have this knowledge way back when in the 8th century? Don't take things personally. The ultimate selfishness is to think that everybody and everything is about you. Taking things personally is when you make everything about yourself. We all know someone that's like that. It's kind of like I talked before about if someone's dealing out garbage and you're just eating it. When you take things personally, if someone's, whatever they're dishing out, you're taking it and you're owning it. You want to not take things personally. Realize if someone else is being negative, it's really about them more than it is you. It's a challenge. If someone's angry, it's more about them than it is you. If someone's jealous, it's more about them than it is you. This agreement seems almost impossible, but I promise you, as you just step back and realize and ask yourself, am I taking this personally? And try to just remove yourself periodically by asking that question. You'll start to take things personally less and less. And then when you can start not taking things personally, you could be in a crowded room with everybody trying to badmouth you, and you wouldn't even notice. What a freedom that would be. Anyway, let's move on. I like that this is an open book test. 3, the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. In the book, he talks about the big mitotes, the Toltec version of the world of confusion that we are in. When we make assumptions about everything, if we can step back and observe and try not to make assumptions, it really sets us free in a relationship. Most of us have made assumptions in any relationship that you're in. Let's face it, if you're in a relationship, we have a tendency to assume that our partner knows what we need. We assume that they understand when we say something, we really mean something else. We need to stop that because making assumptions adds to confusion, and it is one of the biggest mistakes we can make in a relationship. Having the courage to ask can really not only be enlightening, but you will quickly realize how wrong you are most of the time. When you've made an assumption and you ask for clarity, you'll often get, no, that's not what I meant at all. They'll look at you like you got crabs crawling out of your ears because how did you make that assumption by that statement? But that is the world that we are in. And the less that you can make assumptions, especially in a relationship, the more free you will be, the more happy you will be. Okay. I think now one of the assumptions that we have to make, we live in a world of fake news. Now that the fact that there's a term fake news should be criminal. The fact that there is fake news out there should be criminal. The fact there is so much fake news, I think is indicative of the world that we live in right now. When it comes to assuming, we should not make assumptions that any of the news is right. We should research, try to find out, try to not just tune into what a news that agrees with us, but try to really sort out, try to find a source, or maybe avoid the news entirely. But fake news and making the assumptions that that news that we like is correct is a devastation right now, I think, in our society. It's a problem that all the major medias have. Unfortunately, a lot of them are trying to spread fake news, and you don't have to ask which one, because I think they're all guilty of it at some point. We just have to really try to be careful in not carrying the banner of somebody else's. We need to not make the assumption that what they say is correct, and maybe try to really search, try to find out. But anyway, that's a new thing, fake news. I imagine it's not that new, to be honest with you. People have tried to manipulate history and news over the ages. But right now, it just seems to be so in your face that they'll throw fake news out. And, when other countries can throw fake news on our media and we just spew it back out there, it just, it's a crazy world that we're in right now. But I don't have to tell you that, do I? Just recently, I get better and better at this, not taking things personally and try not to make assumptions. And I think I'm doing better than. Unfortunately, just recently, I completely failed on the agreement number 2 and 3, which makes number 4 all the more important. The 4th agreement. Simply always do your best. Thank God for the 4th agreement. Because the best is always different any given day. Your best is definitely different if you're refreshed or if you're tired. Certainly your best is different if you're healthy or you're sick, you're happy or you're sad, angry or jealous. Just keep doing your best. That's all we can do. Try to be present in our journey. The Toltecs referred to it as being a spirit warrior, someone that is really doing their best to be their best. Living the 4 agreements will make you a better Christian, a better Muslim, a better Buddhist, a better Hindu, a better Jew. Let's face it. Make us a better atheist. It'll make us a better human. Just trying to do your best. That's all we can do. Now, let's move on. Open book test. I like this. Last, I'm going to talk a little bit about healthy lifestyle and nutrition. I mentioned I was going to talk a little bit about nutrition, obesity. I read before the information, and here's some new information by the CDC. There's a lot of information about good Lord, from the Mayo Clinic, CDC, all kinds of information about obesity. I got a few pages here. I think I'll just go through all of them over the next 3 hours. Who am I kidding? I'm not going to do any of that. We are fat as a nation. It is a real problem. $20 billion is spent each year on weight loss schemes. Confusing nutritional information. Low fat, I can guarantee you it has more sugar in it. If it's low sugar, I guarantee you it has more fat in it. If it's sugar-free, I guarantee you it has more chemicals in it. And don't even get me started with high fructose corn syrup. Nutrition. It is a challenge to put ourselves on the right road. One of the challenges I think right now is sedentary life. We are definitely becoming worse and worse, more and more sedentary as our youth becomes more sedentary, as all of us become more sedentary. One of the scariest truths and trends of today is that for the first time in modern history, our children are expected to live shorter lives than the previous generation. That is a sad note. One of the biggest problems we inherited is we have inherited the body of our ancestors. Our bodies are engineered to store fat, which can be a challenge sometimes because we feast, famine. We have a tendency to, and our ancestors would go through that cycle and get through life pretty well. The problem is now we are in a feast. We hardly ever fast, except now if you're doing intermittent fasting, which I highly recommend, but I'm not even going to go into that. But that is a healthy thing to do. We as a society are in feast. And so our bodies are engineered by our ancestors when we are feasting, store for later. But we're storing a lot for later. As a nation, 2/3 of us are either fat or obese. It is a real problem. I'm not going to give you the numbers or the statistics. We all know that we're in trouble. I think about my own personal journey with diets. If you're genetically predisposed to being overweight, it can be a real challenge. My wife and I together, we calculated once we were been on over 27 different diets. We've done the vegan. I did the vegan for several months, and I was a strict vegan. I find benefits to it. I found frustrations to it. I went from the vegan diet. This is going to sound insane, but I went from the vegan diet to the keto diet, which is actually about as opposite as you can go. I find benefits with the keto diet. I think some people respond both to either one of those really well. Unfortunately, not everyone responds the same to those two scenarios. But what I'm going to try to push here now is a common sense approach to eating. A common sense approach. Kind of using the glycemic index. I'm only going to I could spend a whole day talking about glycemic index. I'm just going to throw that out there. I want you to research that. It was developed for the treatment of diabetes. And I would say 90% of the patients that I see that are diabetic, I cannot help myself. I ask them about the glycemic index. And what I get is a blank stare 90% of the time. The glycemic index was developed for the treatment of diabetes, and none of them know it. So I give them a little glycemic index lecture and everything. So don't tell me you have diabetes, or I'll stop and give you the glycemic index spiel. Common sense approach: lean protein, fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. Common sense approach: eat color. I do not mean red dye 40. I mean red and yellow bell peppers, fresh vegetables, color, green, leafy vegetables, color. Common sense approach: avoid the center of the store. What I mean by that, all that processed stuff, highly processed, leave it alone. Avoid the center of the store. If something has ingredients, common sense approach: try to keep it under 5 ingredients. 3 is best. If something you pull up the label, and it has 50 ingredients, just set it back there, and you don't even have to mess with it. I promise you, it's an inflammatory food. Another common sense approach: is it worth the calories? I think about my personal history, that the old me, before I started to get a handle on this, the old me, a half-eaten Twinkie that my kids didn't eat, I would clean it up. As parents sometimes, and some of you have been guilty of this, if our kids leave a little something there, we're like the cleanup crew. How that happens, and when the more you think about it, it's pretty grody, but we've been guilty of it. We don't need to only clean our plate, but we certainly don't need to clean someone else's plate. Is it worth the calories? The more strict and stringent you can make that thought, is it worth the calories? You'll find that things become less and less worth the calories. And just that little mantra of, is it worth the calories? And being present mentally in what we're eating instead of mindlessly eating, that can be very important. Common sense approach. Diet. Common sense approach. That's what I recommend. I'm going to end with just a kind of a mindset that I want to share with you about an approach to health and wellness. Typically, we have the mindset that good health, being well, is very, very difficult. And it can seem that way. But I promise you it's mostly that way because we see it that way. Now, what do I mean by that? I want you to use a little bit of visual. I want you to view that your life is the stream. So the life, there's the past, there's kind of future, but the stream is also, there's like things you want, but you feel like the stream is just taking you wherever it's taking you. You have no control. So we have a tendency to get in our little canoe and we get in this stream, our stream of life, our stream of wellness. And we get in our canoe. One of the first mistakes most of us think that we think that we're in our canoe with someone else. We got our family in here, we got our spouse, we got our significant other. I want to promise you right now, there's only one person in your canoe, and it's you. So come follow me on this journey. You put yourself in your canoe and you start on your stream. We have the tendency to think that willpower, I'm getting in that stream and I am going to have willpower. So I start paddling. Now where do I paddle? I'm paddling upstream because that's willpower. I'm going to be eating better. I'm going to be exercising. I'm not going to be taking things personally. I'm not going to be making assumptions. I'm going to be emotionally strong. I'm going to be fit. I'm going to be trim. All these things, and we start paddling upstream where I can. And I don't know if you've ever kayaked or gone or canoed upstream. We can all do it. We can all do it for a while. And then eventually the stream gets the best of us. And then we start going, what the heck? We set our pedal down and we just go wherever the stream takes us. So we have this mentality that we're just getting through it. We're just flowing down. We're subject to all the companies that are trying to sell us fast food, all the commercials, all that stuff that they're trying to influence us. We view that as that's our stream, as all the external influences that are making us do whatever we do. I'm going to try to convince you right here and right now that you can have power over your stream, where it takes you. Now we know, I'm not going to have to convince you this because this is going to sound familiar. The mind has the power to virtually heal the body. Now we know this is a fact. This is not a myth. We know this because of the placebo effect. You've all heard of the placebo effect. I'm not going to go over what the placebo effect, you know what it is. But the effect of the placebo effect is it is driven by the power that the mind can change the chemical makeup in your body to heal itself. Mind can heal the body. So I'm not going to try to convince you and kind of say that you need to have this little mantra in your mind that you are going to heal your body. And even though that is a wonderful guided meditation, I talked before about guided meditations, taking advantage of that. I'm just going to try to have you just ponder, just start to believe that your stream is not controlled by someone else, that your stream is taking you toward health and wellness. When you can start believing that to your core, you'll find amazing things happen in your world. You'll be directed and guided to a book that will take you into wonderful new adventures and learning how to be. It'll take you to a place you'll be inspired to travel to, or you'll be inspired to go to a YouTube channel and find somebody information. One of the YouTube channels I found is Dr. Eric Berg. His approach to dieting, I think, is monumental. A chiropractor, I might add, but very good information, very believable. Just being open to that and believing that you're meant to be well is the first step. Believe that your stream, that your journey is that you are meant to be well. You are meant to be well. You are meant to be lean. You are meant to be strong. You are meant to be healthy. You're meant to be active. You're meant to be emotionally strong and calm. You're meant to be free from taking everything personally and assuming the worst of every scenario. But best of all, you are meant to be your best you. Thank you for your time. I wish you well. It was a wonderful book, wonderful time. I wish I could have met you in person. I'm a chiropractor in Greenville, Michigan. We do lots of fun things at our office. Anyway, that's it. I appreciate my technical guy, which is Oz, a wonderful librarian through the Grand Rapids Public Library. Thank you, Oz. I just waved to him. He's been quiet through this whole project. He gave me a thumbs up. Anyway, thank you. And if you have any questions, he said that he's going to put my personal email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or give any information to you that you might have. And I wish you the best on your journey. Thank you very much.